Jennifer did not want to get out of bed. It was a place of security and comfort. She was in the middle of lockdown. It had been weeks and she was depressed. Somehow, some way, she found a kind of comfort by staying in bed. That is, there was a certain point in time where what was a comfort became a source of despondency and irritation. She lay there that morning, thinking, pondering, wondering, and there was something about the whole experience that did not sit right with her. Inexplicably that morning, late in the morning, she made a decision. A small decision that she was going to get out of bed. And she was going to get out of bed with a sense of determination. And so, taking a deep breath, she got out of bed. And it felt good. In a strange way, it was empowering. So the next step, the next leap of faith was to go and make a nice cup of coffee. And to take that cup of coffee and to sit on her small balcony and catch a glimpse of the blue sky. As she sat there, she saw on the balcony's edge a small red geranium that she had neglected. Instinctively, she went and got some water and filled the pot and watched as the water drained down into the thirsty soil. And then she sat, coffee in hand, that red geranium still hanging on, and the patch of blue sky. Today I want to talk about the issue of faith. I'm not talking about the kind of faith that is often presented in the news media, some fundamentalist Christian screaming that the days of miracles are not over, that there'll be a solution to world peace and violence, that you just have to try harder. I'm talking about real faith. Real faith like that expressed by Jennifer. And there are some key ingredients in what took place in Jennifer's life in that instant. Faith is very personal. It comes from the centre. It's not something that is, can be forced onto you by someone else. It comes from our very depths. It's a very personal decision, and it's a decision. It's, despite all the contrary evidence, it's a yes to life, and it can often be a very small decision. And some of those small decisions are remarkably powerful, like in Jennifer's case, the decision to get out of bed. It was empowering. And once she'd made that decision, other things opened up, like the coffee, sitting on the balcony, watching the blue sky, watering the geranium. These were small gestures. But the fact that they were small doesn't take away from the fact that they were profound expressions of a deep sense of faith and in life itself. In the age of the virus, somehow, someway, we need to reclaim a sense of faith. We are confronted by all sorts of sources of fear, real fear, and of course the ultimate fear is the fear of death. Now, I don't intend to be morbid today, but that's the thing that lurks in the background when we start to think of the virus. We only have to look around the world to see, literally thousands of people are infected and hundreds of people are dying. And so when we think of issues like lockdown and vaccines and anxiety and conflict, most of these things are driven by fear. What I want to suggest today is that faith, a deep sense of faith, does not come by dismissing the realities that we face, by dismissing fear. Sometimes we have to name the fears. We have to accept those fears. And often by sitting with the things that frighten us, by recognizing the dark possibilities that lay before us, we reach that point, like Jennifer in her bed, where, contrary to the evidence, we choose to say yes. We make a small step of faith. Now, to underline this sense of faith that I'm articulating, I need to come back to the whole notion of Christian fundamentalism. Basically, Christian fundamentalism emerged in the 19th century. Two streams, an American Protestant and a European Catholic stream. In both cases, they were triggered by the rise of modernity, things like Darwin's theory of creation. These innovations, these developments, which for most of us were good things, triggered great fear in certain individuals and certain communities. It was the fear of uncertainty. These changes meant that we couldn't be certain. We couldn't have 100% certainty. So since the 19th century, these modern versions of fundamentalism have flourished, and particularly in the case at hand with Christian fundamentalism, they've begun aggressively to infect and try and manipulate the mainstream church. Now, basically, some of the important identifying characteristics of fundamentalism include generally they're misogynistic and homophobic, largely patriarchal, but perhaps the defining feature of fundamentalism is an intellectual or ethical commitment to an absolute version of the truth. The fundamentalist says, I have the truth. It is black and white. There is no room for doubt. That's critical. In fundamentalist thinking, there is no room for doubt. Now, from my perspective, that's not the articulation of a faith. At best, it's a pathology, and at worst, it's an obsession. Real faith, the faith that you and I know and experience, includes doubt. It incorporates uncertainty. Doubt, uncertainty, and ambiguity are part and parcel of normal human existence. They are features of the relationships that you and I enjoy. On that note then, as a Christian person, I follow the way of Jesus because I like that way. I like the kind of people that he has attracted, at least in the communities that I'm involved. This amazing assortment of people, male and female, straight and queer, black and white, attracted by the cause of Jesus. But in my understanding of Christianity, in following this path of Jesus, it's not because he has all the answers, and it's not because the Christian faith eradicates doubt. Rather, faith and my companions in faith form a kind of framework for dealing with doubt, for wrestling with ambiguity, for living with the questions, and even living with fear. So, with that in mind, I want to articulate three really important ingredients for a 21st century realistic or existential faith. The first thing is that it's deeply personal. So whilst I can gather with my friends and celebrate the faith in formal and informal ways, the trigger point, the starting point of faith is a profoundly personal decision. It's about me. My faith comes from the depth of who I am. So we go back to Jennifer of the red geranium. That was an expression of faith. It came from her personal centre. It was about her whole person, that in that bed, wrestling with depression and anxiety and doubt, she got in touch with who she really was, the reality of her life. And in the context of her reality, she began to have faith. There was something in that moment, in the twinkling of an eye, that she both affirmed herself and affirmed the world in which she lived. So faith is not about the eradication of doubt. It's not about dogma. It's not about a set of beliefs. It involves a deep and profoundly personal connection. The second aspect that I want to pick up is the issue of freedom. Freedom is so important, and it's an intrinsic element within the Christian faith. By freedom, I'm not talking about unlimited freedom. I'm not talking about freedom as license. It's not freedom to do what we want. There are always constraints. There are always limits. Instead, I'm thinking of freedom as the capacity to make decisions, to be an agent, to challenge, even transgress the limits. Jennifer in bed was confounded and restrained by certain circumstantial and self-imposed limits. But as a very personal decision, as a gesture of freedom, she decided to get out of bed. The third thing about faith, along with it being deeply personal, it may lead to community, it may lead to collaboration in the world, which is wonderful. But there's this personal, profound personal connection. It is also a remarkable expression of human freedom. And the third thing is, it often begins with small steps. These are difficult days in which we live. And I would not want to diminish the challenges that ordinary people are facing around the world, diabolical challenges. But there's something about small decisions that we can make in a day where we reclaim our own personal power, where we acknowledge not only the significance of who we are, but the fact in a way that my life and your life is a gift. And in reclaiming that, and in making a decision, a small decision, we not only exercise freedom, but we exercise freedom because we've reclaimed a sense of faith. For me, it was a lovely image of Jennifer summoning her courage, engaging her faith, choosing to get out of bed. And she did. And from that flowed a new sense of energy and perspective as she made that coffee, sat on the balcony, watered the parched geranium, and caught a glimpse of that beautiful blue sky. Faith is a remarkable thing, and it often begins in very small human steps. And in those steps, we not only affirm something about who we are, but the inherent possibilities of life itself. In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer. Amen.